We're continuing in our fantasy unit, and today's goal is to keep track of problems. Now, you should be pretty well into your fantasy book by now. You may even have read many chapters, or you may have finished your first book and started into a second book. I want to talk to you a little bit about how problems can multiply. Have you ever set out to solve a problem and then it seemed like the problems just kept multiplying? Let me give you an example. I had a friend who rescued a kitten, and you can kind of see a little picture on the left of the kitten. Looks pretty rough. Well, shortly after my friend rescued the kitten ended up having very serious medical problems, and she had to take the kitten to the vet for an emergency procedure. Well, after the kitten finally made it home, turns out she was terribly allergic to the kitten. This example shows you how sometimes in a situation problems can multiply or they can become worse. As you tackle more complicated fantasy books, you're going to need to keep track of the problems. You're going to need to keep track of how the problems multiply and the problems that each character faces. Let me give you an example from the book Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. In the beginning of the book, Harry's mother dies. She's killed by Voldemort's dark magic. And then shortly after that, Harry is left on the doorstep of his aunt and uncle's house. Harry ends up being given a bedroom that is actually a closet under the stairs, and he's mistreated by his aunt and his uncle. Later in the story, when he begins to receive an invitation to Hogwarts on his 11th birthday, his uncle destroys the invitations. He rips them and burns them so that Harry cannot open it. This is an example of how in a story like Harry Potter, the problems multiply, they get worse, and we can keep track of them in a way that you see on your screen. You can also keep track of problems using a timeline. Take a look at this example. Here you can see that we've drawn a straight line down the middle of the page, and then using the places above and below the line, you can jot down the problems and the characters that are involved and provide some details from the text as to what those problems are. You can also keep track of problems using a chart like this, where you have a separate piece for each character. So on the far left, you might jot a character's name and then explain their problem and give some details from the text. And then so forth. There's one in the middle and one on the right, where you can explain different characters and their problems. Now keep in mind, only some problems are eventually resolved, and other problems may change. Your assignment today is to choose a chart or a timeline. Now, if you look at the options on the far right of your screen, you'll see option 1 says keeping track of problems using a timeline. You may choose to jot the problems in your fantasy book using a timeline like that. Or you may choose option 2, where you include some pictures or maybe even some sketches. And then beneath that, a description of the problem and how it changes or how it multiplies or how it gets worse. Or you may choose option 3 on the bottom, which is keeping track of problems using a chart, such as one block, which uses a character's name and an explanation of their problem with some details from the text. You're going to do this work on a piece of paper or in your notebook, and then you're going to submit a picture of how you have tracked the problems in your fantasy book. Make sure you send me a picture of that. You could also do this on Keynote and send me a picture of that slide. You would just have to take a screenshot and then upload that into Schoology. I'm looking forward to seeing how your problems are multiplying or changing over time. You're going to need to keep track of those problems because the problems are really important and they might help us learn about characters or perhaps learn life lessons. Have fun with this assignment, and I'll talk to you soon.